Hey guys, welcome to Pour My Mods. I have here my 2003 Toyota 4Runner with the 2UZ V8. If you don't recognize this vehicle, that's because I haven't really featured it on the channel before. It's not a go-fast car, but I did do a Pour My Mod to it that I want to share with you guys, especially the 4Runner community. But even if you don't have a 4Runner, you can probably appreciate what I did to this. This is a mechanical fan, a clutch fan, a thermostatic clutch fan, and I hate these things. This thing howled and blew all the freaking time, and it's the same thing on the Sequoias. Freaking every Toyota that has this, you just hear it howling all the time. And if you can hear it blowing, that means it's consuming power and fuel, and it probably doesn't need to be. Now I do know most of the time a mechanical fan like this will flow more air than an electric fan in most cases, but I really don't think that this is needed on this 2003 4Runner. Now, I don't remember the exact operating temperature for this thing. It's like 210, 215, 220, something like that. It's in the 200s. I don't remember it off the top of my head. But that fan would be blowing all the time, and it's totally not needed. So I decided that I wanted to put an electric fan in this, but I wanted an electric fan with an integrated shroud that would fit the radiator as good as possible and be affordable. So I did a bunch of looking around. I actually used Rock Auto for a lot of research. So I actually went to Ford first because I know Ford makes a pretty good electric fan. If you're in the import world and you modify cars, you've probably heard of people running like Crown Vic or Ford Taurus electric fans in their vehicles. Ford makes a pretty good fan, and there's a bajillion of them, and they're cheap. So a lot of people actually run them in aftermarket applications. So I know Ford makes a good fan, so at first I went to Ford and tried to find a vehicle with a similarly sized radiator to the 4Runner, and lo and behold, the S197 Mustang has a similarly sized radiator. It's very close to the 4Runner here. The S197 fan has an integrated shroud, which is what I'm going to show you in this video, and it fits pretty darn good on this radiator. It's a little small height-wise, but it covers like 95% of this radiator, and it has an integrated shroud, which is great for airflow. And since it's an OEM fan, it looks freaking OEM under this hood. And so now that I found an electric fan, I had to figure out how to control it. And I got off Amazon for like 60, 65 bucks, a thermostatic electric fan controller. So it comes with a probe that you put into the radiator. It reads the temperature, and you can set at what temperature you want it to kick on. And it also wires into the air conditioning. So the fan will kick on at a certain temperature, and it'll kick on when you turn on the air conditioning. So it's like an OEM setup. And on top of that, if you're going to do like the timing belt or do any kind of work on this engine, you're not going to be fighting that stupid fan anymore. And the previous owner of this 4Runner, that mechanical fan actually exploded and dented the hood up. And apparently that's kind of a common problem with these for some reason. So going to this electric fan, you get rid of the annoying howling all the time. You free up a little bit of power and fuel economy. If you don't believe me on the power, Motor Trend's Engine Masters did a video comparing electric fans to mechanical fans and showed you just how much power those kinds of fans can eat up. So there's a bunch of upsides to this. Really the only downside is you got to spend a little bit of money to do it. I bought my fan off of Amazon, but you could probably go to a junkyard and get one for like stupid cheap, maybe even free if you know someone with a totaled S197 or they're upgrading. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be showing you step by step on how to do this. At the time of doing this, I was not planning on making a video, but after I got the result of my fuel economy increase, I knew I had to share it. So I'm going to try to show you the best that I can on what I did, but I'm not going to exactly show you how to do it because it's already been done. But just know that this is for the 4Runner with the 2UZ. It may work with the V6. I don't know how the clearances are or even what the radiator looks like, and it will not work on the Sequoia. For some reason, there's actually less clearance between the radiator and the engine on the Sequoia, and the fan won't fit. I found that out firsthand with Marty Motoring. Very interesting. So let's go into this engine bay and I'll show you what I did. Okay, so right off the bat, it looks pretty stock up here. I mean, I've got the coolant reservoir there. You can see a little bit of wiring, but The shroud is still here, and it doesn't look like it's really modified here. But there have been some modifications, and I'll try to show you the best that I can. So this overflow reservoir, it's there. It's not as secured as some may like, but it is held on. It's got a little bit of wiggle to it, but it was able to secure to the radiator with the bottom right tab of that overflow reservoir, so bolted up right there. Then under here, I just added a zip tie, and it's pretty much good enough. Seriously, in the factory location, you wouldn't even tell that this is modified if you just popped the hood and looked at it. Took off the radiator cover, and now you can see a lot more of the wiring and a few more of the zip ties that I added. To secure the top of this fan a little bit better, I drilled some holes in the radiator and put some zip ties through there. And then I attached those zip ties to some zip ties that I added to the fan. Some may prefer another mounting solution for the top, but this worked totally fine. And you can see I added a little foam gasket between the fan and the radiator just to give it a little bit of cushion so it doesn't damage the fins on the radiator, and that worked out really well. That was just like a garage door foam gasket. As you can see, the height of this radiator fan is not perfect for this radiator. There's a little bit of a gap at the top. A little bit of the radiator is exposed, but it is all the way down at the bottom. But the width is absolutely perfect. For the price of this radiator fan, you really can't beat it. It's covering 95% of this radiator. Now to get this fan to fit in the 4Runner, I'll have a picture up on the screen here, but I did have to cut off one of the tabs on the lower right side of the radiator fan. It was just causing some interference with the radiator hose. I zipped that off, very, very simple, and it dropped pretty much perfectly right in. And then to get it to bolt to the radiator, there's two tabs that line up pretty much perfect, but I just had to slot those holes to make it a little bit wider, and then it bolted right up to the radiator. It's almost a perfect fit. So there's the one tab. The bolt goes through the tab of the radiator fan to the radiator, and you can kind of see how I notched that tab, and it bolts up freaking perfect. Same thing for the passenger side of this radiator fan, but it's kind of hard to see now because that tab is sandwiched between the overflow reservoir and the radiator itself. But just like the other side, I just had to slot that hole a little bit, and it bolted up perfect. So up top here, I have a bolt in the fan here, and then a bolt in the fan over there. And just for a little bit of added security, I added those two zip ties, and then I added some other things down below. Let's go look at that. Okay, so down bottom, I did the same thing up top. I added some insulating foam on the bottom just so it doesn't destroy the radiator. Down here towards the driver's side, kind of hard to see, but I did add one of those radiator zip tie things just to keep the bottom from flopping around. All it needed was one, and it feels really secure to this radiator. Here is the electric controller that I'm using to control the radiator. When you turn the ignition on, this lights up your current temperature readout, and then you press this button here to set your thermostat. The thermostat probe runs from that controller over here, and I put it right near the upper radiator hose. You just stick it in the fins right here. You don't need to stick it in the coolant. You just stick it through the fins, and I secured it with a little bit of black RTV. And the temperature reading it gets here, and then the temperature reading that the ECU is seeing, there's about a 10-degree difference because the ECU is reading the coolant temperature from in here, but I'm reading it there. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. But basically, when my controller readout is reading like 190 degrees over there, I have this kick on, which is about 200 degrees. And this thing doesn't activate unless I'm sitting in traffic for like... And there are a few wires with this controller that you have to wire up. So this one right here, labeled battery, obviously you just run that straight to the battery. Very simple enough. This one is labeled air conditioning, and you wire this into your AC compressor. So I ran that wire over here. So here's the wiring that goes to the AC compressor, and I tied my wire into this, the bluish green wire with a black stripe. So now when I turn the air conditioning on, voltage gets sent to the controller and it kicks the electric fan on, regardless if I'm at the set thermostat temperature for that. So whether this is cold or hot, when you engage air conditioning, it'll turn the fan on, just like it normally would. This yellow wire gets tied into your ignition, so when you turn the key, it turns this on. If you run this to your battery, this will be on all the time. But you want this to go to your ignition so that the controller is only alive when you turn the key on. And let's see where I connected that to. Since I had a few wires running over here, I thought it was easiest to tie this in to this wire right here. So I tied in to the black wire with a yellow stripe. That gets power as soon as you turn the key on, and I made it disconnectable there. So once you turn the key on, this gets power, and since this is tied into it, it sends power all the way over there to the controller. And of course, I grounded the controller basically to itself right there. That is the ground wire. And this particular controller that I have gives you the option of running 2 fans. Most cars do have 2 electric fans. One is for just the radiator, then the other is the air conditioning fan. But since we only have one giant fan, I just put these 2 together, and now they both power this giant fan. Right there, the red wire and the black wire are the wires coming from the radiator fan. This wire right here is the power going from the controller to the fan. And then, of course, the black wire back there is the ground, and I just grounded that to the throttle body. You can't see it right now, but when you buy this fan, there is a resistor built into it, and that gives you a high and a low speed for the fan. Now, you could, if you wanted, you could figure out how to wire that resistor up to your fan 1 and fan 2, so you have a high and a low, but I just cut that resistor out and bypassed it. So now basically there's one speed, and that is full speed. So my power wire from the controller goes to the red wire on the fan and sends it power, bypassing that resistor. Then the black wire goes to ground, completing the circuit. Super duper simple. All right, guys, there you go. That is how I installed an electric fan on my 2003 4Runner with the 2UZ V8. I absolutely hated that mechanical clutch fan. The thing just howled all the time, and I was amazed with the fuel economy pickup on this. Now, maybe your results will vary, but I saw a 2 mile per gallon increase getting rid of that mechanical fan. It just ran all the time, and you could hear it. You could hear it doing work, and it just sucked up power. So yeah, the electric fan eats a tiny bit of power when it kicks on, but if Motor Trend did a really good video, Engine Masters on Motor Trend, they compared electric fans to all kinds of different fans. And that clutch style fan eats up like 10 to 15 horsepower. You couldn't necessarily feel the power increase with this, but I definitely saw the fuel economy increase because it was just that much more load taking off the engine all the time. So I really, really do recommend this. I have a scan tool that I have a scan tool where I can read the actual coolant temperature of this thing. And cruising down the highway and on back roads, it doesn't get over like 189 degrees, which isn't even close to triggering my fan here. And it takes minutes of sitting for my fan to kick on. Like if I go through the drive-through or the ATM or whatever, you might have different results if you live in the desert or in Arizona or whatever. But here in Pennsylvania, this fan is barely doing anything. It hardly ever turns on. This engine does not run hot. I have the same setup basically in my IS300 that has the 1UZ in it, and that fan almost never kicks on. So I think this is incredibly worthwhile, especially for the price. This fan I got off Amazon for like 60 or 65 bucks. If you go to Rock Auto, you're gonna spend a little bit more. If you go to a junkyard, you can get it for way cheaper. You might even be able to get it for free. I mean, there's a freaking million of these fans out there off of a S197 Mustang. And the controller was like 60 or 65 bucks. For like $130, I have invested in this, and I saved 2 miles per gallon and picked up a few ponies, and I don't hear that horrible whining, blowing noise. This is absolutely a poor man mod, and I am super proud of it. I know people have done radiator fans before. I think I've seen people put like a Mercedes fan in here. But for the price of this and how good it fits, I really don't think you can beat it. I am very, very happy with this. This thing moves plenty of air. This thing doesn't even get close to running warm. So I am super happy with this. Definitely a poor man mod. Definitely something I recommend for the 4Runner. This will not work in the Sequoia. Unfortunately, Marty Motoring and I found that out. So hope you guys enjoyed this video and hope you like my 4Runner. You likely have not seen this before. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks.